dog days, exactly?
I just always thought they were the hottest days of summer.
I think they are.
So...
They totally are.
I don't know if that's right now.
It's got to be right now.
It feels like right now.
Do you know where that comes from?
No, I don't.
Other than it just feels and sounds like a good expression. I just feel,
yeah,
like dogs panting.
Right.
Because they can't sweat. Poor things. But it comes from astronomy because it's the Sirius is the dog star.
Okay.
And the point where it's sort of the most prevalent, or when it's heliacal rising.
Okay.
Is it's always associated with ancient peoples. Like, oh yeah, this is the hottest time. This is like right before harvest.
Okay.
Those are like the dog days.
Well, they're not over yet.
It fits because it's so hot.
I know.
It's so hot that I forgot to turn off the fan. I have a fan that points at my computer. I don't know if people can hear it or not, but I'll reach down and turn it off. What do you know anything about astronomy?
I know next to nothing about astronomy. I had a fun glow in the dark astronomy book when I was a little kid.
Did you have stars on your ceiling?
Yes.
They invented those right after I would have been age appropriate.
Yeah.
I eyed them in college as yeah, I'll never get laid with those in the dorm room. That's not going to happen. But yeah, I always loved astronomy. You could tell us about astrology, but then all the astronomers who are listening would tear their hair out.
Wow.
So maybe another show.
Okay.
And I bring it up because we're going to have somebody who is connected with astronomy on the show today.
Okay.
Bridget Landry.
Yes.
From JPL at NASA is one of the people that we talked to at CONvergence 2017.
Yes.
And so we'll be talking to her. Well, you'll be hearing our talk with her today. She had a very fascinating talk at CONvergence about her work on Cassini with the Cassini probe.
Yes.
Which I felt like I learned some stuff. You?
I felt like I learned some stuff too. It was a lot of fun. The pictures were amazing.
Yeah.
It was really cool. Just hearing some actual science being laid down.
Right.
You know?
And then right after that, off to the warp drive. How does it work?
Right.
Panel. Yeah, exactly. Not quite the same thing. But we had a lot of fun talking to her, and we'll be talking about that. You'll be hearing that later. Also, a couple other people that we talked to at the show that are going to be on the show today. We also talked to guest of honor Eric Chu.
Yes. Who
is a artist and animator and designer who's most probably famously known for designing the new look of Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, the Cylons and the Raiders and some of the ships and things like that. And we talked to him, had a great talk with him. It was his first time at CONvergence.
Yes.
And I think he had a pretty good time, and I hope he comes back. And we'll be talking to somebody who it wasn't his first time at all, but Pat Tomlinson was also somebody that we talked to. Pat Tomlinson, author, also a comedian, and a pundit, a political pundit.
Yes.
I've never met a pundit before. It's pretty much what you expect. It's just a person. But we had a great talk about all of those aspects of his life and career. And we're talking to him, or you'll hear that talk again later on in the show. Which show? This show, our show, the Just Enough Trope podcast. I'm your host, Caliban, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Mika and Hannah.
And we're here to bring you all the news that's fit to cast in the world of nerdy entertainment, if we can keep it together.
That's right.
Just long enough. I feel like I'm in the agony booth in Star Trek. We're just... If you hear a Chekhov scream come from me, that's why, because it's so hot. But we're going to try to get through this. We're actually going to be a little light on news today because there's just so much content with these interviews and also the features that we have to get to, which I'll tell you about in a second, that we'll just be sort of brushing the news.
Okay.
And, of course, this is nerd news. There's been a lot of real deal, actual news going on in the world today. Stuff that Pat Tomlinson would probably want to talk about.
Probably.
Yeah. Political stuff, but not a political show. So we'll just leave that to our interview with Patrick. But yeah, we'll be talking about the news. Also, of course, it is our comic book club segment this week, as we do every other week. And we'll be talking about something that was inspired by something that we saw recently. We saw Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Yes.
Speaking of space and astronomy, we saw that last week and gave our review on last week's show. And because it's comic book club, we're reading the inspiration to that. that. The original Laureline and Valerian and Laureline graphic novel or strip. The first installment in that called The City of Shifting Waters. And I've made the joke before, but say that a couple times fast.
Yeah, seriously.
And see what happens. Actually, I found out, and maybe I should save this for the segment, but I found out that that's not actually the first.
Oh, really?
So what the hell are we doing with our time here? Screwed that up. No, I mean, it is generally the first, it's sort of the first collected or the first published when they collected them all as a trade paperback and published them.
Okay.
But there was an original story that takes place before that called Bad Dreams.
Okay.
Which is sort of the initial one. But it was shorter. It was only like 30 pages when the rest of them are 42 or 46 pages or something like that. And it was never translated and published, or at least wasn't at the time.
Okay.
So nowadays, I think if you go out to find it, they've got it, it's published, and it's marked number 0, like issue or collection 0,
sure.
because they'd already done the numbering for the other ones. So
interesting.
Yeah. Whoops. I don't regret reading the one that we did. Not to give away my review, I enjoyed it, and I think that it, with its space and time adventuring, it gets the feel of Valerian and Laureline.
Yes.
Down, and so we didn't screw up. We didn't miss anything.
No, I don't think so.
But if you do like it and want to start at the very beginning, start with that volume, Bad Dreams.
Okay.
And also, speaking of films, we have a review for. See, this is kind of flipped around a little bit, but it's fun.
Yeah.
The last time we did Comic Book Club 2 weeks ago, we talked about The Coldest City, the graphic novel that is the inspiration for the current Hollywood blockbuster film Atomic Blonde.
That's right.
Which we have a review for on this show.
Yes.
And blondes, they don't get much more atomic than that.
No, they don't.
That was about the most atomic I'd ever seen a blonde. Do you think that her hair was even sort of cut like a mushroom cloud? You know what I mean? Like it had that sort of look. They were, once they had decided that this was going to be Atomic Blonde, heroine in the comic book, not blonde, by the way, they went all the way.
Yeah, they did.
So she's like a platinum blonde, and that is emphasized throughout this entire thing.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, once you change the name from Coldest City to Atomic Blonde, you kind of hung your hat on that hook.
I think
or
so.
Or your wig, such as it is. So...
Yeah.
But we'll save all that talk for later. Other than be just a melted human candle like Tote in Raiders of the Lost Ark, how are you?
I'm okay, Cal. Hang in there.
Baby?
Yeah.
Like a kitten.
Exactly. Just meow.
I saw something on... do you ever go on Imager?
Yes.
Any kind of, vote-based or like community sort of curated social media is going to be... Danger, Will Robinson. There might be a GIF of the robot saying Danger, Will Robinson. But today we're recording this on the 29th of July. And I guess the 29th of July is Upvote Everything Day.
Oh, really?
So normally there's a front page that has all the content that has received the most votes. It's the cream that has risen to the top, right?
Right.
And then you can also go to what they call user sub, which is just literally where everything starts. Like you can just, somebody takes a picture of a carrot that looks like a dick, and then they put it in there. And depending on if it gets votes, eventually it starts rising up, and then it'll reach, most viral, the front page.
Sure.
On the 29th, everybody upvotes everything.
Okay.
So when you go to the front page, to the most viral stuff, it is all the things that you would normally see in the bottom. The joke about user sub is like you go in there and you come out with white hair like you're 10 years older.
Oh my gosh.
Because of all the weird stuff in there. Now it's all weird stuff. And so it was fun for me for about 10 minutes, and then it was like, I need a shower, and I need some Tylenol, and I need to just do something else for a while, because this is the craziest stuff. But I did see one cool thing, which was literally a candle, a tote candle. I think that's the character's name from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The yes, I know you will. You know that guy.
Yeah.
Burns the thing on his hand.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, they open the Ark and he melts like a candle and then explodes or whatever. And they had a candle that was him, and then they showed a time lapse where they lit the candle and then he melts. It was neat. I kind of want one. The only thing they did wrong is that there wasn't a skull in it, so his whole face and body just kind of collapses. But you need to have like a skull.
There you go.
Do just the head, because they did like a whole body. Do just the head, and then have some kind of plastic skull that will melt perhaps after a longer exposure, or maybe you could just have a skull left, like once the candle burns down. That's
there
fine.
you go.
Yeah, but you just do that, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Arts and crafts. Who knew that it could relate to your interests, like gory head explosions and meltings in film? Well, let's get right to the news. So, like I said, I just wanted to like kind of goose the news, just tweak it a little bit.
Goose the news.
Yeah, just talk about a couple of the things that are going on in this world of nerd entertainment. Remember before, a while ago, and don't check the game film on this, but I asked the universe, I asked God why there was no JRR Tolkien biopic.
Sure. Let's say yes.
Oh, come on. It would be a great idea. If you
It
can
would
do,
be, yes.
If you can do Stephen Hawking, let's see, I figured out this great theory. I got ALS, and then what's the next? What's the third act?
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of him. This is perfect because the guy wrote a lot. He had a really weird, like interesting upbringing too. Like he was born in South Africa and his father died very young, and like so it's just his mom and his like brothers or something like that. And they got to get out of there, come back to London, and then he goes to Oxford or whatever it was. Don't quote me. And then he meets like C.S. Lewis and all these other guys, and they create the Inklings. So you've already got like you're a little older, but maybe you're like British. Outsiders kind of thing.
Sure.
Instead of Pony Boy, it's Orcyboy or something. And they're all writing and getting in trouble. And, you kind of goose it. You fluff it up a little bit. You don't tell the whole truth.
Sure.
And then he's like, I'm going to write The Lord of the Rings. And, he's going to write it. And that starts inspiring people. And
okay. I could totally see it.
You're not on board for any of this.
No, I could totally see it.
Then you got to have like that, what's the third act? I don't know. Did he do anything crazy in his later years?
I have no idea.
Like say Hitler was right or anything like that? I don't think he did. But you manufacture something, right? And then you have, of course, his books were popular when they came out in the war or like post-war period.
Sure.
But they got real popular again like in the 70s. Like, people were really, when counterculture was kind of at its peak and not just the main culture now, it seems. I mean, in a good way.
Sure.
People were writing Frodo lives on, spray painting it on the walls of subways and things like that.
We got Frodo of the Nine Fingers.
Yeah, you get the Rankin Bass abortion. And so you could have his sort of now he's Gary Oldman's playing him as an old man, and you could have his reaction to that. And he's like, well, okay. It's the pen scene in A Beautiful Mind. I can't believe that I'm quoting a Akiva Goldsman film as the example of what to do. But he's like, it seems pretty good. And then he puts his pipe down and dong, cut straight to the funeral.
Oh no,
he's dead. But his kid, Chris Tolkien, of course, would be a big part of it.
Okay.
You're not into this. You don't want this at all.
No, I'm totally into this.
Well, anyway, I hope that it becomes good. I hope it's a thing. It's the script's by David Gleason and Stephen Beresford. I don't know those names. I don't feel like looking them up. It's too hot. But the script is going to have him, it's going to go through his experiences like in World War I and hopefully, like I said, his childhood and stuff like that. And so I think this could be a thing.
Okay.
You don't have 6
good.
movies, and there might be more on the way, who knows, that take the world by storm, and then you don't look into who made these things, right?
No, I agree.
We really need a George Lucas biopic is what we need. His story's not over, and of course there's young Lucas in Love or whatever that like indie project was. But
doesn't he?
He's
have,
probably
like,
keeping it being made. I'm sure there's good scripts for
he
it.
is.
But he's all right, get him, boys, and a bunch of stormtroopers bust into the screenwriter's room at night and break his typewriter, that sort of thing. So yeah, I want to see that one too.
Yeah.
Is there of course there is. What's the one that's about C.S. Lewis?
Oh boy, I don't know.
Come on.
I have no idea.
It's got like Anthony Hopkins, right? Isn't that it?
You're probably right.
The Remains of the Day. That's not it. This is the part where I don't hear clicking and clacking. That would be right. You could look that up. Don't look it up. It doesn't really matter. We will definitely get letters, and they'll tell us. So let's move on here. Let's talk about Superman's mustache.
Okay. Must we?
This is real. How's your healthcare? You got healthcare still?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about Superman's mustache. That's pretty important.
Okay.
So the Justice League reshoots, they're always, when a movie goes wrong, and one has, nobody will ever go, oh my God. They run out of the Warner Brothers offices, hair on fire. It's always like, it's fine. Ship sunk, underwater. Hand holds up a sign from underwater. It's fine. They are doing these reshoots with Joss Whedon, who will not be getting directorial credit.
Okay.
At this point. I think you have to do it like at least 40% or something like that. But anyway, I think he's just said, who cares? I'm Joss Whedon, whatever. The reshoots are so extensive and they're taking so long that they're cutting into the actors' other projects and scheduled time, you know.
Uh-oh.
So the guy that plays Superman...
Henry Cavill.
Why did you remember that?
I don't know.
Are you hiding? Are you holding on to me?
No.
You a Cavill head?
No, I'm not.
Are you one of Cavill's gavels? The one to bang it? It's a gavel.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, he's working on something else and he has to grow like a scruff and like a mustache for it. But they need him back in the spandex or foam rubber or whatever they make them out of these days, the neoprene, to do these reshoots. And so they're going to have to digitally remove his mustache. He's going to have it still. I want to see the pics from the set, though.
No kidding.
It's like Trailer Park Superman, which is it's a good cosplay too. So, I think that's really awesome. They can hide it. Just take the back of his head or something, right? Or just CGI his old head on his new body.
His old head on his new body,
right? Like Data did that one time. A lot of Star Trek references. They could do that. Whedon, this is not the first time that he's had to deal with this.
No.
So I don't know if you remember the infamous shawarma scene from the end of Avengers.
I do.
They literally shot that. That was not, when they premiered the film, you know, like, hey, red carpet premiere, that whole thing. That was not in the film.
Oh, really?
No. And they supposedly got everybody together like after the premiere or like soon after the premiere and went and shot that real fast because they thought it was funny and just put it in there. But Chris Evans was working on some other horrible movie that he was in, because all of his movies are horrible that aren't Marvel movies. It might have been Snowpiercer. There you go. And so in that shawarma scene, you see Cap, but he's kind of got his hand, like he's resting his head on his hand, and it's kind of over his mouth, and that's because he's got like a full like goatee for whatever this movie was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you never like see his face, but you didn't know.
No.
So do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just have Superman like, hands over his mouth, or the cape just like, well, my cape is just misbehaving and it's just over his face, or maybe he's eating. You know, we never see Superman eat, so he's got a hot dog holding up like, yeah, no, Doomsday, got it right.
You don't know how extensive these reshoots are.
Oh, they're this extensive. But yeah, we don't know what they'll be doing specifically.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll just call for him to just be standing there.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Batman versus Superman, wasn't it? Boom! Got him. So
yes.
One more thing. Anne Hathaway is in talks to replace Amy Schumer in that Barbie project.
Interesting.
How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
I feel like it's not really the same message.
So what was the message before? Because I had trouble with that. I never really understood what it was.
I had trouble with it too, but it was something about like how this Barbie didn't quite belong, and
oh, okay, right.
And it had something to do with like, it was almost like they were going to introduce something about like her. They were going to talk about her weight, but then they were going to bring it around and make it like, you know, we come in all different shapes and sizes, right, and that sort of thing.
In the doll aisle.
Yeah.
For little girls.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So do you think Anne Hathaway is going to try to, I mean, she's like does she produce? Does she the question is, does she produce?
Does she produce on this?
Has she been a producer in the past?
I think she maybe has been.
Probably. She seems like the type.
Yeah.
She seems like the type of actor who's like real concerned about. She's not just gonna like, because I've never heard. Well, Gary Oldman did direct something, but again, second Gary Oldman. So we're racing Star Trek and Gary Oldman references right now.
Okay.
I've never, unless he does it secretly, he's not somebody who creates like vanity projects, as far as I know. Although this upcoming Winston Churchill movie is certainly a vanity project.
Yes.
At least for him. You saw the trailer for that, right?
Yeah, I did.
So the lowdown is Winston Churchill biopic. We're going to fight on the beaches and the land and the air and the fields or whatever. And it's Gary Oldman. And then how do you make that interesting to non-History Channel people? You put the girl from Downton Abbey in it.
Yeah.
The Baby Driver girl.
Yep.
And so she's like, I sure do like that we're going to fight on the beaches. How does she fit into this story?
I have no idea how she fits into the story, like, at all.
Would you see it because she's in it?
I don't think she's a draw. I mean, I hate to be a pessimist here.
Baby Driver would prove you wrong.
Yeah, well, Baby Driver proves me wrong on lots of things.
Sure does.
Including whether it's a good movie or not.
Oh, no, we did that already.
I know.
A couple shows ago.
I know.
Yeah, all right. So anyway, I don't know. I actually think this might work. I think the Amy Schumer thing might have worked too, if they're going for that sort of angle that you were talking about, or I think that they said they were.
Okay.
I think this will work. Why not?
All right.
They're going to have to change what that thing is, though. They're not going to be able to do that thing. But Anne Hathaway, if she is in the mood to laugh at herself, which she is sometimes, but not all the time.
Sometimes.
We'll just do the whole... It's perfect, because she's got that slightly sort of, I'm having so much fun kind of thing, which you could definitely do. If you're going to do a satire of Barbie, you have to do.
Yeah.
Because Barbie's world is perfect. When she's done operating on horses, she takes a meeting with the Joint Chiefs. Then she climbs in her space capsule to go see what's going on in the ISS. She's got a million jobs.
Sure. Yeah.
Which says a lot about our economy.
Yeah.
And so in this case, like, you could have that, but this is going to be like Barbie. It doesn't have it all together. She and Ken are on the outs.
Right.
The pink Corvette's in the shop. And so it's more like... I've got it all together.
Yeah.
And I think that she could do that really well. I think that'd be perfect for her.
That's true. Do you think they're going to dye her hair blonde?
You're going to have to.
Okay.
But she did it she had a wig for Alice in Wonderland, right? She did.
Okay.
She was the White Queen.
Oh. I think I knew that.
She was a steampunk blonde. It's in the past. It's not an atomic blonde. Dumb. All right, I said there was one more, but there's one more thing we have to talk about. James Bond is coming back in 2019.
Oh, boy.
And Daniel Craig will be playing him.
Are we excited
It's the
about
25th
this?
James Bond film.
Oh, my God.
Am I wrong? Or don't we all hate James Bond and Daniel Craig now?
Well, we're not excited about it.
And nobody's been
that's for
talking
sure.
about it. No, nobody's been talking about it at all. And then this announcement comes out and people are like, ooh, ha, ooh. We all hated Spectre, right?
Yeah, we did. And Daniel Craig is not excited to be playing this role anymore.
No, he was on his live journal talking about how he's going to kill himself if he has to play it again.
Yeah. So why are we excited to see another movie where he's playing James
Speaking
Bond?
of Dog Days, it's all just thematically connected. We just salivate like you're ringing a bell when they say a James Bond movie.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because we've got so much invested in it, because there have been so many good moments. I'm thinking back. I mean, I'm a James Bond fan. I like the movies, but they're probably not generally great movies. I'm trying to think of like one James Bond movie that's like a really good movie, but there are a million good moments and kind of scenes and setups and stuff like that.
Sure.
But, we talk about, and maybe this will leak into our Atomic Blonde review a little bit, but isn't it, it's so old, they already, two Bonds or one Bond ago, they already did a thing where it's like, well, this is kind of over, isn't it? I mean, Cold War's over.
Right.
You're a dinosaur. Like, what are we doing still? 8, 9 more films go by. And so my question is like, what are we gonna do? What's he gonna do?
I have no idea what he's
We've
gonna
covered
do.
everything at this point. And people say, well, why not like a Jane Bond? Okay, yeah, but why take... It's not like The Doctor where the character can literally be a woman, so go for it.
Right.
Why turn this sexist, dinosaur of the Cold War area? It was an area. It was in Eastern Europe.
That's true.
But it's also an era into a woman just to do that. Why not create awesome new characters like Lorraine Broughton in Atomic Blonde?
Right.
Atomic Blonde is Jane Bond, basically.
Yeah.
Like, she is doing like Daniel Craig James Bond, only it's Danny with an I.
Right.
She's a female spy that kicks as much ass as James Bond does.
Absolutely.
Got anything more to add than just positives? If you had said no, that would have been the trap.
No, I agree with you. I don't think that we need to have a Jane Bond per se. Like, I think that the character, we don't need to have a female and male counterpart to every iconic character.
I guess. I mean, yeah, but you at the same time you want, equal representation, and it remains to be seen. We have a little data about how Atomic Blonde is doing, but it remains to be seen over the years as it goes. If you hear that, hopefully not too young girls, it's an R-rated movie, but younger female viewers are like, that was awesome.
Right.
Like, I want to see more of that.
Right.
So, no matter what happens, I think there will definitely be a female James Bond-ish type character in the new Bond.
I'm okay with that.
He won't be just carting the chick from Blue is the Warmest Color or whatever around. Like, there will be another woman who is... And I know we're all smarting from Halle Berry still. It's been 15 years or whatever, but get some character like that who can stand up against him.
Yeah.
Because did people like Mr. and Mrs. Smith? I didn't, but people like that?
I think people liked
They're
that.
like, husband and wife are spies, or like True Lies.
Yeah. People like True Lies.
Do that.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably do it, right?
Yeah, we should.
Okay, let's get to it.
All the single ladies, 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 all the single ladies. Now put your hands up in the club. You just broke up. I'm doing my own little thing. You decided to dip, and now you want to trip. 'Cause another brother noticed me. I'm up on him.
All right, we've talked about it. Let's actually just get right to it. And here is our talk with Bridget Landry at this year's CONvergence. Well, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, thank you.
You just gave a talk or a panel about your work on Cassini, the Cassini probe. You've worked on a lot of other projects with JPL, though.
Yes, I have. My first mission was worked for James Westphal on the Wide Field Planetary Camera on the first space telescope. Unfortunately, the camera didn't do what we wanted it to because the mirror was bad.
Right.
And so I wasn't able to... I had been hired as a data wrangler, basically.
Okay.
And so they had to have so much processing of the data that I really couldn't do what they wanted me to do because I didn't have that kind of training.
Sure.
So from there I went to an Earth orbiter called TOPEX, which nobody's ever heard of, but it has a lot of input into weather simulation.
Okay.
And you see a lot of its data on weather shows and things of that sort. Mm-hmm. From there, I went to Pathfinder, which was fabulous. It was great. It was very exciting. It was very hard for me in some ways because I'm very much a linear thinker.
Okay.
I like rules. I tell my daughter this. I like the rules. The rules are there for a reason. And, I'm not saying you can't break them, but you got to know what they are first.
Sure.
And Pathfinder was very amorphous in its structure, and so it was very hard for me to work on that because I had to define my own role, and that was very difficult for me. But it was fabulous.
Interesting. Amorphous in terms of just the structure of the group working on it?
Yes. They had this tendency to look at the whole that they had and hire somebody, and they would then carve their portion out of that whole, and then hire somebody else. And they had several instances where they'd hire somebody, and they would be gone in a month, and then they'd hire somebody else, and they'd be gone in a month. And they had to, and then somebody else would come in and would be able to work in this very unstructured environment.
Yeah.
And so it was self-selecting, and I almost got selected out.
Well, adaptability and problem solving, is clearly a part of the job, though.
Right.
That's in the description.
So from Pathfinder, I went then to Cassini, which was such a culture shock. And then I went back to small missions to work on Dawn when it went to Vesta. Mm-hmm. And after that, I went to Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and now I'm currently on Odyssey. And I did a little bit on the Spitzer Space Telescope. Oh, okay. I covered for the woman who is now my boss when she had her twins.
Oh, wow.
So while she was on maternity leave, I covered for her Spitzer.
What was the transition like from Pathfinder to Cassini?
It was very much a culture shock because we tended to do what we needed to do, and you made sure that whoever needed to know about it knew about it. But Cassini was very much more procedure and process and forms and paperwork. Pathfinder had cut a lot of that out, and you can do that when you have a small mission. You can't do that when you have people all over the world.
Did you have as many people fighting for sort of time with Pathfinder as you did with Cassini as far as research goes?
No, because we were the first ones back.
Yeah.
For 20 years after Viking, there was nobody at Mars.
Right.
We had several losses, but Pathfinder was the only game in town when we were there. There was nobody to do relay for us. There was no.
Right.
There was nothing. So.
Yeah, and I remember seeing in '97 those first images from Pathfinder and thinking, oh my God, color pictures from Mars.
Yes.
The images. Do you think the images are really important? Clearly for research, but for the public to see us exploring space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We will never send a spacecraft somewhere that we don't send a camera because we are very visual beings.
Yeah.
And we process information visually in a lot of different fields. When I first was on Pathfinder, I thought it was kind of a boondoggle that they did this stereo imaging. The camera has two eyes. And the first time I looked at a stereo image from Pathfinder, it was like, oh, I get it now.
Sure.
I really get it, because geologists look at the terrain and they can tell a whole lot about what has happened just by looking at it. But you need the 3D. You need that depth.
Yeah.
And it was really a revelation for me.
Sure. When you're programming for these craft and you're communicating with them, there's a delay, which varies obviously depending on how far it is from the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
There's the 7 minutes of terror when you're working with Mars craft. But much longer when you're working with something on Saturn. Does it take a certain kind of personality to know that you're going to enter some commands, and then, as you said in the panel, go to lunch or something like that, and then come back and find out if everything worked out or not?
I think it does. You just have to be aware that it's that sense that you send it and you have all this time to second guess yourself.
Yeah, there's an emotional investment.
Exactly, exactly. And you just have to learn how to deal with that.
Sure. And also you're controlling, a multi-million-dollar spacecraft on the other end of a radio, basically.
Yes.
It's just that would be. They talk about steely-eyed missile men. I think the people behind the computers have to be made of steel as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of the craft that you're working with, like you spoke in the panel about how Cassini was designed. Built 15 years ago, but designed even earlier than that. Mm-hmm. And so your job must be getting computers to talk to each other, but there must be a difficulty in getting old systems to talk to new systems. Do you program in essentially the same language across?
That's actually a question I get a lot, and there's a complicated answer to that. The original software that was used to make the programs that we use on the spacecraft was programmed in Fortran. And that's what I learned when I was a kid.
Sure.
And you've still got Voyager flying.
Yeah, right.
And so you still have to have it backwards compatible for those missions.
Right.
But newer missions are trying to take advantage of some of the newer technology or newer software or whatever. And so, it's very complicated. We actually have trouble sometimes retaining software people, because if their focus is the software, they're not happy, because we can't change and update and make it new all the time the way they would like to. We can't take advantage of some of the new advances because it has to be able to speak to Voyager still, and it has to do this and it has to do that. And if you're not jazzed about the fact that what you're building is going to a spacecraft, you'd be just as happy programming toasters, in fact, happier.
But yeah. And there's got to be some kind of job security, too. There's still one guy around NASA who programmed the calculator that powers Voyager.
Yes, there are things of that sort. There are. I have a friend of mine, when she was in grad school, had to find this guy that had retired because the data she wanted was on a mag tape somewhere, and nobody knew what the format was, and so she had to take him out to lunch to get him to.
Okay, all right, I can see that. That's nice. I know that you are very enthusiastic about getting girls and young women into STEM careers?
Oh, yes. I try to talk to schools when I can, and Girl Scout groups, and girls' STEM clubs of various sorts, because representation is important. They see me, and when I was younger, it was more important because I just look like an old lady to them now. But I have a friend who's on Twitter as the Planetary Carrie, and she's what I used to be 20 years ago.
Okay.
And she dresses up as Ray, and she goes to
Sure.
so kids can relate to her. But yeah, I love talking to children. I love talking to young women and talking to them about some of what you're going to face is going to really suck. You still aren't even equal, and you're still going to get judged, and you're still going to get harassed, and you're still going to get hassled. But you can make it through, and it is worth it. There is a lot to do that is just really, really exciting.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of you mentioned the technological advancements that we've had now over when Cassini was built, for instance. What are some of those things? How are they affecting probe development? Clearly, we've got more storage capability now.
That's one of the things. It's interesting. One of the ways that we use less fuel and point more accurately is by using reaction wheels. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, there's only one place making the reaction wheels. And everybody uses the same wheels. And so Cassini actually has been very instrumental for other teams because we've been running them longer than anybody else. And there are certain problems that these wheels have that we have figured out how to deal with and pass that information on to other spacecraft. So finding something else to use to point with, some better reaction wheels, would be something that we could really use. But the problem is you have to have it flown in space to make sure that it actually works in space.
Okay.
And so that's why the shuttle wasn't cutting edge technology, because you have to vet it in space, and that's not an easy thing to do. How do you
test a probe?
And it's a catch-22. How do you fly something that hasn't been flown yet? And
sure. Well, there's a lot of improvisation and kind of taking risks. And you talked about flying the Cassini very close to the bodies out there, and also through the plane of the rings.
Yes.
You talked about the bacon frying. Which has to be exciting, but also it's if this doesn't, if we don't get a signal back, what happens? Does somebody get fired? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. There has to be because you're exploring, really. But
yes.
Where do you cut that line between the calculation and also, let's just wing it, let's just see what happens?
Again, that's a function. Each mission has its own personality, and smaller missions are much more willing to take those chances.
Yeah.
Because, they don't have to justify it nearly as strongly.
Sure.
But, and there's always this dichotomy between the spacecraft folks who want to protect the spacecraft and the scientists who are saying, if we're not going to take these images, then what the hell are we doing out there?
Let's ram it into this thing. Come on.
Really? So what happens?
Right.
So, it's a give and take. It's very hard to make those calls sometimes.
Sure. You're wearing an amazing costume today.
Thank you.
And you're a costume and a cosplay enthusiast, particularly for Star Trek, I hear.
Yes.
You're a Star Trek fan. What's your favorite Star Trek costume that you've done?
Well, I'm old enough that when I was doing this, there was only one Star Trek. So,
right.
So the original Trek is my favorite.
Sure.
So I have several of those uniforms, but I also like Deep Space Nine a lot, so I ended up doing Major Kira as the evil... the alternate universe.
Right. The intendant or whatever she's called. Yeah. A lot of revealing costumes in the original series.
Oh, yes.
A lot of drapey sort of things. And yeah. You have a theater background, is that correct? Or you studied theater?
I did take theater as a child. I was part of a theater program where we put on 3 musicals a year and several smaller plays. And if you didn't make it into the play, then you worked on the crew. So I did costuming and lighting and props and stage building and all of that stuff. So I had an
You've been working on teams since a young age.
Yes, exactly. And actually, the theater background was very helpful in working on missions, because an engineer who's only come up through engineering and being in classes doesn't really understand that it can all go pear-shaped.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
They don't really believe it. If you've been on stage and somebody has stolen your line or the prop isn't where
Right.
you need it to
or
be,
that light didn't come on. Yeah, right.
you understand in a real visceral way that
Time to start tap
it
dancing.
may not go the way you think it's
Right.
going to go.
Yeah. You're a science fiction fan.
I am.
When you watch science fiction, especially hard science fiction that's trying to be like real life, do the errors that you see or things you're like, that's not really how it would be? Does it take you out of it?
It does, sometimes. It has to be egregious.
I could just go right to the Martian, I guess. Andy Weir's The Martian.
I love The Martian.
Oh, you do like it?
I
Okay.
do,
Okay.
I do. I went to see it with, I have a group of ladies that we go to, from work, we go to lunch, and we
Sure.
went to see this. And we all loved it.
Yeah.
You know, there were places where it wasn't accurate, and we understood why they did what they did.
Right.
But I was sitting next to a woman who works on one of the rovers, and she just kept bitching about, they don't drive at night. We can't drive. We
Right.
don't have lights.
They don't work. Yeah.
But a lot of it was very accurate.
Yeah.
And I grew up reading Heinlein, so you
Oh,
know.
yeah, sure. There was the one, I think, at the end when he punctures his suit, to
Yeah.
get thrust. It's like, well, if you just did it on your hand, you'd just go spinning around like a pinwheel. So you wouldn't be Iron Man.
Yes.
But thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
It was great talking to Bridget. Something that probably doesn't come through on radio is that she had an amazing costume on.
Yes, she did.
And if you could probably hear it during the interview, this jingling sound. She had like bells or chains or some kind of accoutrement on her outfit, and an amazing like pink wig.
She had an amazing pink wig, and she had like ruffles on her shirt.
Yeah,
And everything,
Yeah.
and on her wrists.
and she told us that she would be wearing different costumes throughout the con. She had a steampunk Cruella de Vil, which I really wanted to see, and a sort of gender flipped Mad Hattress,
That's right.
which sounds really interesting too. She talked about working on the space telescope, and I remember when that was first launched, it was a big deal because it was considered a failure because the mirror was like ground incorrectly.
Okay.
This is reaching way back now, but when I was in high school physics at the time, and our high school physics teacher was an engineer
Okay.
who got a wild hair up his ass to affect the young minds, and get out there and enrich young kids, and quit a couple years later because he was making 7 figures
Sure.
or like a high 6 figures in engineering, and he's like, well, screw this, I'm just going to make money because they couldn't pay him at all. So sadly, that's another initiative I think that we need to talk about, like getting higher salaries for teachers,
Yes.
getting smart people teaching our kids. But he explained to us, I think that there's this thing where it's a parabolic mirror, or it was supposed to be a parabolic mirror, and they ground it to like a spherical mirror. So there's like a spherical aberration, which is when what you want with this mirror is you want all the light rays to converge at a point, where your detector is or whatever.
Okay.
But they had ground it to the wrong specification, so it just wasn't doing it right.
Okay.
And so people like Bridget had to write like a software patch, essentially, to fix that. And then I think they put some sort of apparatus on it that acted kind of like glasses, like kind of fixing like your vision, to fix it. But yeah, we got a little inside info from our engineer teacher. Wonder what he's up to now.
That's pretty cool.
Solid gold hot tub.
Probably.
Doesn't make any sense. It'd get really hot, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Yeah. So that's not good. I also liked her talking about collaboration and just having to, as somebody who really needed structure and then got into this thing where people's roles are defined kind of by what they're doing, having to learn to like work with the other people and on a project, with the same goal in mind, but
Right.
you're all doing different things. That's tough.
It is tough.
But anyway, we really had fun talking to her, and I hope to talk to her in years to come. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be great. How does it feel? I feel like I've been asked that a million times musically. And I want to know how it actually feels to be treated or not treated or something. Anyway, we're talking about Atomic Blonde. It came out this weekend, the 28th of June, wherever we are in the dog
July.
days. Yeah, right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And it is a action spy sort of thriller movie set in 1989. Literally at the fall of the Berlin Wall. Well, actually, not the literal fall. At the death of the idea of the Berlin Wall and the restriction in travel between East and West Berlin, the wall itself came down over the course of the next year or two.
Right.
When they pulled it down. But yeah, it's right in the middle. It's a Cold War nightmare. It's set firmly in the 80s. There are lethal amounts of neon throughout this film. And we've already talked about The Coldest City on a previous show, and we will be talking about that in relation to this film as we talk about our review. But what happens in Atomic Blonde?
In Atomic Blonde, Lorraine Broughton recalls what her latest mission was to Berlin, in which she had to try to find this list of names that had been taken from another agent and when he was killed.
Right.
She basically runs into other complications along the way, as you expect.
Wow. That is not a good elevator or in the room pitch.
No?
Because the other things are stabbing people in the throat and throwing them down the stairs and crashing a Volvo.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is where you would go. And those things are. And you got some storyboards.
She meets up with a French operative and they start having a fling, and she meets up with James McAvoy's character,
right.
And she doesn't totally trust him.
Who is the sort of bureau chief, or what have you, in the Berlin area for MI6? Yeah, and I mean that's about it.
Yeah.
I can never remember. Do we do spoilers or not?
We do some spoilers.
We could talk. Well, let's maybe do a little spoiler section at the end of the review for 5
Okay.
minutes or so. And it's going to be hard to, because we've spoiled The Coldest City already. If we talk about what happens at The Coldest City and what doesn't happen in the movie, that's kind of like off spoiling. That's kind of like collateral spoiling damage.
Sure.
So let's try to be careful, but we can talk about some of the differences.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all pretty good. What did you think of the film?
I enjoyed the film. It was pretty atomic.
Not a blonde enough, though.
No. It was very stylized. Lots of neon. They had her wearing pretty much all black and white with a little bit of red.
This was clearly a choice by them because when it's not, a lot of it is desaturated to give you that it's behind the Iron Curtain look of, a Cold
Right.
War drama. But when it wasn't almost no colors because it's desaturated, it was vomitous colors. Like it was neon greens interacting with neon blues and neon reds and just like this crazy panoply of chromatic delights, which I found oppressive. We get it. We get it. When she checked into her hotel, she's like, could I have the neon suite, please?
I
There
know.
are there are naked neon tubes just in her hotel room.
I know.
And I thought maybe we could get away with, well, this is her. Remember, everything that happens is her retelling. So
Right.
maybe it's like a Princess Bride thing. Like maybe it's actually not the best example. Think of an example where somebody's describing something and it's bigger than what they say it is.
Oh.
And I'll keep working. So maybe it would just be her recollection of these events, but they never ever. I think the frame device exists only to honor because that's what that was in the comic originally.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it adds very little. It gives you a chance to have Toby Jones just look flustered
Yeah.
and ask her questions, but.
And John Goodman. Don't
I'm not.
forget
Yeah,
John Goodman.
yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't unless. And then there's something that happens at the end that is kind of a payoff of it. But I don't think that it's strongly structured enough that we would really need that. Why doesn't it just play out in real time? Just a little comment,
Yeah.
because I found that it's tough to jump back and forth in a movie because this movie does. It starts off, we see a thing, and then it's like 10 days later, or 10 days before, or flipping over here, or like, oh, then this happened, and then let's rewind it. And that's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, it happens a lot in this film.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too... When you've got that solid sort of... We always know that the interrogation is what...
Is happening in the
That's
present.
the present, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not that bad. But this movie flips back and forth. And also, okay, so this is already it's a scattershot kind of unorganized review, but I thought that the director, who's David Leitch, who is a former stuntman, and he's currently, I think he co-directed John Wick
Okay.
and or John Wick 2, and is directing Deadpool 2.
Oh, all right.
So he's clearly made his bones as an action director. This movie itself is very John Wicky, if that's
Yeah.
a adjective. It is Jane Wick, if you want to do that.
Sure.
I don't. And so that all comes through. But as a storyteller, I don't think that he's got the chops, just yet. There's a distinction between Eastern Berlin and West Berlin, or at least there should be. Berlin is always a rough place, but when you go to East Berlin, that's a big deal.
It should be a rougher place.
Yeah, and the first time we see a character cross the border, he does it in this huge flamboyant... Like if a flaming police car, was like rolled into the Berlin Wall,
Yeah.
we would hear about that. All
Yes.
these things happen in the 10 days before, and the comic book gets into this a lot. They get into the fact that this is this woman's story, Lorraine Broughton's story, but she is framed by all the men in her life who are her superiors, who run this espionage business, who are playing at silly buggers with each other, playing the great game type thing.
Right.
And one of the reasons that she works so well is because she is this unassuming woman that just sort of navigates through.
Right.
Well, that's gone. Now she's kicking guys downstairs. Cool, but I'm just making a point.
Right.
And so throughout the entire comic book, we're always very aware of the fact that all of these old men and their mustaches and their aged whiskey think that they're out of jobs. They think this is over. They think this is like the end of spycraft as we know it, because Russia and America are moving towards detente and that sort of thing.
Right.
And so I'm sure there were protests, in Berlin, but eventually the powers that be just kind of gave up and just let people go. If a serial killer came to Berlin in the 10 days before the wall fell and left dead bodies on the expressway and choked out half a dozen cops, and was shot and stabbed half a dozen people in an apartment building, they would have delayed dropping the wall. They would have been like, we need to find this. We've heard that we think that she's a woman. She might have a turtleneck over her face. And she's basically a serial killer who is just,
Right.
just tearing her way through Berlin and killing Stasi left and right.
Well, and she attacks.
It's very exaggerated. Where the book was a story of spycraft and a story of, skullduggery, of hiding, being a spy. Shh, quiet, spy. Shh.
Right.
That was more Jean Le Carre. This was definitely more James Bond.
Yes.
There's actually a quote in the comic book, I remember, that where they're talking about, well, who could have done this? And somebody says it's probably the KGB. And the character says, the KGB doesn't go around shooting British officers for fun. The game was never that blatant, even in the glory days. And in the very first scene of this movie, it's like, I knew it was you KGB bastard. Yeah, well, what are you going to do, comrade? Blam, 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 blam.
Yes.
Let's push this car in the river. It's just so, it's like 14 people will be looking out their windows like, what the hell are you doing? Rant off. Sorry, go ahead and say what you're going to say.
I was just going to say that it is very different from the comic.
Yeah.
And for good or for bad, that I think they knew what product they wanted to sell, and
Yeah.
and they wanted it to kick ass, and
Yeah.
and she does.
Yeah,
but she, like, I think you mentioned this. She actually attacks Western Berlin police and not like Eastern Berlin police.
I know, which is weird because she's going through the guy's apartment or whatever, the guy that was
Yeah.
killed. It would be real easy to go, oh, do you know where Daniel is? I'm his sister, and I don't all of his stuff is messed up.
Right.
She doesn't have to beat up the good guy police. I mean, she's a spy. She doesn't want to get caught.
Right.
But wait until they're all looking in one room and then sneak out the front door, or just take that extension cord and just climb down the outside.
Right. Why
but
does
she
she
kicks
have to
the living
beat them
snot
all
out
up?
of half a dozen cops.
Yeah.
Low profile. And
Right.
then goes back to her neon hotel room. And there's never an APB out for a platinum blonde dressed woman
No.
in stiletto heels.
No, there never is.
It's a movie.
It is.
The movie that I'm imagining or describing that's a direct adaptation of the graphic novel would be a small budget, independent movie, $3 or $4 million,
Right.
And this is a $30 million action movie. So anyway, I'm fine with that. I'm just pointing it out. Who else are the players here? James McAvoy
Yep.
plays like we said, the guy who's the head of the office in East Berlin.
Yep.
There's only one person apparently, but whatever. Again, a lot of stylistic choices are made that are very cinematic, both in the good and bad implications of that word.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like there was probably any open air espionage secret markets in East Berlin, where a
Right.
guy goes, "Give me what do you got? What do you got? What's your secrets? Come on, hey skateboarders, keep it down over there." Breakdancing and stuff like that probably didn't happen. A lot of this to the neon and everything else, and then the scenes on the very night that people are getting through the wall, where there's people kissing or like hitting the wall with a sledgehammer. It feels very much like the Gap commercial version of, or Zack Snyder's Fall of the Berlin Wall. Like it just feels, I feel like it would probably not that much neon. I watched it on TV and I didn't see that much neon. So, yeah, but McAvoy's good in this. I think this is like one of the few films I've ever really liked him in. I've never really liked him all that much. And I think that he gives a very restrained performance when it has to be. And then he goes out and goes balls out when he has to. And that's good. That works.
No, I think McAvoy was good in this as well. He really brings it, and he doesn't let Charlize get away with things.
Like in the story?
Yeah.
Or he sort of matches her.
He matches her. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, let's talk Charlize.
Okay.
Love her. Not her best performance. I think lockjaw, teeth gritted, I'm real serious guys, Charlize is your worst Charlize. That's not your best Charlize.
That's true.
She's tough, and we've all heard about how she's done the majority of the stunts when they're doing the long tracking shot, stairwell fight, which we'll get to. That's all her and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing performance. But the actual performance, I know this woman is supposed to be a cold-hearted, spy, and a bit hard to sort of latch onto, but there's just nothing there. And when she's got her kind of shaky British accent, and she's just like, well, he's like, oh, Frank, I love you. She's like, that's too bad. All right. Why am I supposed to get excited about her, following her around? Because, what are the stakes for her? Why do I empathize with that? Except for, all right, just get to the next part where you kick a guy down the stairs. Like, that's kind of what I'm waiting for.
Right. That's what you're waiting for this movie, for sure. It's not Furiosa.
No, and good pick, because here's another movie where she's a tough, semi-silent badass, but there's just so much more heart, for lack of a better term.
Right.
We get how important it is to her to get these supermodels to wherever they're taking them in this truck.
Exactly.
But whereas in this, it's just kind of like the difference, mood spelled backwards is doom. It's like, here's your
Right.
character. What's my character? Your character is, you're a super cool, badass spy. It's like, well, that's not much of a character. Like, am I doing it for my country, or
Right.
because I love the danger and excitement?
What's my background? Like,
You're a super cool, badass spy. All right, action, speed, sound, everybody, come on. Like, it's, yeah. But there you go. That's David Leitch. Because he's worried about getting the camera lined up for the digital blood splatters and stuff like that. So let's talk about the action.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
I thought it was great.
Let's talk about the music. No, let's keep talking about the action. Yeah, great. Are you kidding me? It was the best part of the film.
Yeah.
And I thought it was better than John Wick because 200 men didn't die for a little beagle puppy. But also that it all was important to what was going on. You know, take one guy away from the club fight that, you know, let's just digitally erase one guy that Keanu shoots in the head. Doesn't matter at all.
Sure. Whereas
every single person that she has to interact with and fight, even the cops, I guess, in the apartment, it's all a struggle for survival. She's doing that for a reason.
Yes.
And there's that part where she takes Eddie Marson, you know, into the apartment building because whatever their plan to get him out or whatever has been compromised. And she didn't have a gun, or she does, and I don't remember what happened.
She ran out of bullets.
She's got a gun, that's right. And she thinks, okay, we'll go up in the elevator. I don't know what their escape plan was. Get to the roof, maybe? Anyway. But they go up, and then they get confronted by a couple of these KGB guys, and she starts fighting them. And that's like, I was almost asleep in the film until that happened. And then that's not the end of the movie. It's kind of like just after the midpoint, like the action, you know, climax or whatever. And I was with the movie, even through the kind of bad, slow parts after that. I don't know how you could have put that earlier or injected that verite sort of energy into the film earlier. But up to that point, it was just a bunch of people pretending that they were in the 80s. And then, no, everything snaps into focus, and she is fighting for her life.
Right.
In a way that you always see this in films. People fight each other until they're hamburger. And it's like, in real life, that thing would have been over in 30 seconds.
Right.
Somebody, you crush somebody's eye socket or something, or somebody loses enough blood that they're kind of groggy, and then the other person just chokes him out. But they play on that as the fight goes on because, and this isn't spoiling anything, and you're welcome to join in anytime, they get to the last part where there's like this one guy left that she's got to kill.
Right.
And she and the other guy are just teetering on their feet, and they're just slamming each other against the walls and just
barely
trying to get up,
can breathe.
Yeah, right. and so yeah, even superhumans are still human, too human. Any other good action points stand up for you?
I mean, I guess the other action point would be the apartment building where she beats up the cops and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah, which is a good, you know, well directed or choreographed segment.
Yes.
One thing that, you know, the marketing of the movie was very heavy on the action, and you feel like, except for the last parts of that stairwell fight, a lot of the action is in the trailers. Like, you can watch the vignettes on YouTube and see all these parts. So that's kind of something that the movie lacks, I think, is that definitely see those things, but you can see them online. Why would you see the movie? And my answer is, I'm not sure, because you like Charlize Theron, because you want to see
you want to see more
James McAvoy performance. Yeah, I'm not sure
shots.
The film has a lot else to really recommend it. But yeah, I was just a little disappointed by that scene because I had seen it essentially in its entirety, like in the
trailers.
Trailer.
Yeah.
But they clearly put that in for what I was suggesting, which is, all right, people are probably getting bored talking spy stuff, so let's have her just beat up a bunch of guys who are just doing their jobs. Just worried that a murderer has returned to the scene of the crime.
Yep.
And they get their asses handed to them for their troubles.
And I do like the guy that she has the extension cord wrapped around his neck and then she
That's
jumps
something else.
off. I know it's ridiculous.
But why?
I know.
What if he was suicidal? What if he went, yes, take me to the other side?
Oh my gosh.
And he ran, jumped off the balcony. Just tied to the radiator or something. You're crazy.
That's true.
You're a crazy person.
Yeah.
We're getting closer to spoiler time, I think.
Okay.
So let's kind of start to wrap it up a little bit. What are your sort of final thoughts about the film?
I enjoyed it overall. I would recommend it. It's stylized and it's in your face, but it's a fun film, I think.
I must be losing my touch because I kind of liked it too. I feel like the last couple films we've seen, although we did kind of say you can skip Valerian, I think, and people have. It's only made like $20 million on like a $200 million budget. Luc Besson will never direct a film ever again that he doesn't pay for.
No.
Which I would say too bad, but I don't know. That's a different show. Yeah, I don't know. It's somehow it's more than the sum of its parts. I think the 80s stuff doesn't work at all. You are continually, and in a post-Guardians of the Galaxy world, we will be anyway, but you are continually ear-raped by the most obvious 80s music choices you could ever have.
That's true.
There's a scene where this guy who's kind of the main bad guy of the film, although he just kind of shows up every once in a while. He's part of the secret police or whatever, and so he's interrogating these kids who are in the secrets market, which is a real thing in East Berlin the night before, and he's like, we're looking for this guy. And of course they won't tell him what he wants to know, and so he's like, come here, give me this skateboard. Anyway, he doesn't hit the kid with the skateboard for the next maybe 2 minutes, but the way he holds it telegraphs that he's going to do it.
Yeah.
And this is all shot from far away. Do a thing where he just throws it on the ground or something like that, and he's trying to. He's like, hey, do a little break dance for me, comrade. Let's see how that goes. And the kid's like, grabs his puts his hand behind his head and does whatever that is, chicken wing. And he's like, oh yeah, very good, very good. And then beats the crap out of him. To put some cuts in there, put some inserts in there. You know, he could like step on the skateboard so it flips up, and then he grabs it, and then that's a little stylized.
Yeah, I like
do that. But it's like anything that wasn't rehearsed for months that involved Charlize was just sort of like, whatever. He just beats the guy up, and then of course he beats him up to 99 Luft balloons because what a perfect song for a beating. That and Cat People, and it's like, now that's what I call 80s. Like, it was the most there's no deep cuts anywhere. There's nothing you could do.
No.
In a funny little observation that is, I'm glad that I saw, but also sad that I saw, when she goes to meet James McAvoy at his little hideout or whatever.
Yes.
He's got a TV on, and the TV is playing the video for What's on Your Mind by Information Society, which I do not have the rights to. I do not. I use that for my Star Trek show. But it doesn't play at all anywhere in the movie. I'm sure it's on the soundtrack.
Right.
And so I think is like, all right, that's another one where I think people would, oh yeah, the pure energy. Yeah, I remember that.
Right.
But it wouldn't just be the most 80s, like a George Michael song or something like that.
Which they did. They used
Yes.
a George Michael song.
So why not use that? And the answer is, I bet it's more expensive than you'd think. Or I bet they ask more than you would think for it. Which means I'll never get their permission to use it for the show. Delete all this.
No.
These are my machinations to try to steal music. So yeah, that was, I don't know how old David Leitch is. He's probably my age. I don't believe that he was ever lived in the 80s. You know what I mean? I mean, you can be stylized and yet give us, because like, look at a Pet Shop Boys video is stylized,
yes,
and yet it's still firmly in the 80s.
Yes.
You know, look at a Tears for Fears video or something.
Sure.
But this was just, you know, we live in a post-Skyfall world too, so of course we have to have a scene where she fights a guy and it's all in silhouette and we can't see a goddamn thing. And it's like, oh, who cares? Roger Deakins makes one James Bond movie and everybody loses their minds. Speaking of that, that fight took place at a movie theater.
Yes.
That was showing Stalker.
Yes.
Come on, David Leitch. You made John Wick. What are you doing here? We're all film fans. What are you doing? Come on. I felt like Stalker, which I love and is a fantastic movie, out of many fantastic movies in Tarkovsky's career. But that's kind of the 99 Luft balloons of like Eastern Bloc film references.
Yeah.
You're kind of like,
It is.
do Stalker. That's fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what the cultural sort of mandate was or the rules were at the time, but I'm not sure that they would allow didn't Tarkovsky like get exiled or something? Would they
I'm not sure.
Would the Soviet authorities allow a film like Stalker, which questions all kinds of authority and things like that, to be shown?
That's a good question.
Who cares?
It was in East Berlin too, right?
It's a reference. Yeah, it was in East Berlin.
Yeah.
And also, there's what's that kid's name? There is a scene where she goes in East Berlin to talk to this kid who knows. A lot of the characters are poorly defined in this.
I would agree with
which
that.
is not good when they're all white guys in like trench coats. You really gotta, you know,
have
make
Mr.
a distinction. Yeah,
so and so and
Mr. So and so. Well,
Yeah.
this Mr. So and so was played by the guy who's going to be Pennywise or is Pennywise in the new It.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, his name is Sumpinum Skarsgård. I think Bill Skarsgård.
Okay.
And he's like a kind of cute, slick
Is
looking
he
guy.
related to the other Skarsgårds?
Don't test me. I don't think so.
Okay.
That'd be cool though if he was.
Yeah. Be a lot cooler if he was.
Stellan, it'd be a lot cooler if he was. He's Stellan Skarsgård's grandson or something like that.
Yeah.
Because there can't be any more Alexander. There's Alexander Skarsgård, Peter,
Yeah.
There can't be any more of those hanging. There's no more Baldwins
There can't be anymore.
in that. No.
Yeah.
What were
Maybe-
we even talking about?
Maybe
So
it's
anyway,
a popular last name.
yeah, sure. It's the Swedish Johnson.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Johnson is the Swedish Johnson. So anyway, I think that's a thumbs up from both of us. It's certainly, they talk about turning your brain off. It's light as air, like it's a complete meringue.
Yeah.
But it's a bloody one with a knife stuck through the top.
Ooh.
So I think check it out for that. Now, we're going to talk spoilers right now for the next 5 minutes. So skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled. Okay, so what was going on in the ending?
I don't know. It's confusing.
It's not confusing, though. It's totally clear. It's confusing why they made that choice because, as we know in the graphic novel, she is Spectre or whatever, or Lecter,
What is it?
Grecker, Satchel.
Satchel, yes.
Actually, it's actually Satchel in the comic. I think it's just Satchel in this because whatever.
It's easier.
Yeah. So she actually is, and so again, she tells this story, and that takes place in a post usual suspects world. We're led to believe that much of
Right.
what we get from her account is false.
Right.
We don't know if any of that stuff ever happened. And when she said, like, I got to the place and the guy's already dead, then we see, like, a photograph of her that was taken by the French guy, probably, where she's talking to the guy. Like,
Right.
she killed that guy.
Right.
She's the bad guy the whole time. No, they're never going to do that in a Hollywood movie. But just cut it off then.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Have one little thing where she, tracks James McAvoy down in America. Or so he makes it back to America, and then he's like, I think this is room service. And then she shoots him. She Matt Damon's him in the Departed.
Right.
But instead they go through this whole thing of like, nope, there's one more fight scene that is coming because it was in the trailers, and we haven't seen her in a black wig yet. And it turns out that she was lying. But she blames James McAvoy for being Satchel, and she was an American agent the entire time?
Yeah. That's the part that that's confusing to me.
It's dumb.
It is dumb.
It doesn't ruin the movie, but it's dumb.
And it wasn't in the comic.
No, which is fine. Whatever. They're going to add stuff.
I know, but why make her American at the very end?
Because we love Americans.
Well, yeah.
And
but
Charlize Theron is American. Well, she technically is. Since 2007, she is.
She might be now, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Not impressed by that. We talked last week about gay washing. How'd you feel that turned out? Here's what I mean if you didn't listen last week. The quote unquote love interest in the graphic novel is a French man who's working for the French Secret Service or whatever, secret agency. And it's played by Sofia Boutella in this film.
I thought it was fine. I don't think it detracted from the story at all, and I think it's totally fine for. I think that Charlize's character is
Sexually fluid?
yes,
Sure.
and
We're not trying to do a bi-erasure thing here. That's fine. But when you make a major change like that, what is it for? And I agree that even though it's a completely unmotivated change, that was probably there just to sell a film with a lesbian sex scene in it to horny kids.
I think so too.
Which that's kind of doubling down. I don't think you really need to that bad to get people to see this. That's kind of why they're doing it. But it turned out okay because it's a change from the book. In the book, remember, I think she is with that guy just to keep him close, and then it's heavily implied that she rubs him out at the end. In this, they change it. So she's got this whole life where she has to deal with these horrible men, and she meets this girl, actually kind of falls for her a little and feels, a connection to her. Then she's fridged. Let me finish. Then she's fridged.
Yep.
And then that kind of gives her motivation, and she goes off. She kills McAvoy, but she's probably going to do that anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, it deepens the story because they turn her into a character who was a clenched jaw, but still a character who is a human being who's wrestling with all this stuff and has to take baths full of ice because
Right.
of all her injuries and stuff. And it humanizes her, and I think that was a good move for that. What do you think about bury our gays? # bury our gays.
What?
So there's this thing that people have pointed out, a trope, if you will, since we're supposed to be doing tropes here, where oftentimes gay characters get killed in movies or have to, if they have a relationship, one of them dies, they have to be sort of punished. Do you think that's what's going on here?
Okay. Maybe. I almost feel like the girl is punished because she's the innocent in the film.
Interesting. That's our little alarm going off for the 5 minutes. Interesting. Yeah, that's that would be a trope as well. I don't want to say no because that is a problem, but I would say I think it's just that way because it's that way in the book. That's what happens to that character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now you have made that character gay,
Right.
so that you've introduced that. And so for a movie by it was marketed to teenage boys by a male director and a male screenwriter, the guy that wrote 300 wrote this, it was pretty sensitive.
Yeah.
Except for the whole tits out in the trailer type thing.
Right.
But yeah, all right. One small step in a Louboutin, one giant leap for womankind. I don't know.
Hast du etwas Zeit für mich? Singe ich ein Lied für dich von 99 Luftballons auf ihrem Weg zum Horizont. Denkst du?
All right. Well, as we're moving on to our review of Laureline, and I always want to put the lady first. Should be what it is, shouldn't it? But I guess it's Valerian and Laureline.
Yes.
Or just cut her out of the movie title all the way. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
The City of Shifting Waters. We'll get to that in a second. First, though, we want to drop our interview with guest of honor from CONvergence, Eric Chu, who is an artist and a designer and an animator who's probably best well known as the guy that redesigned Battlestar Galactica for a new generation.
Yes.
And people hated it. No, people love the show, but of course, toying with something that people love is dangerous.
Yes.
And we talk about that in the interview. Here it is. Can you talk about your love of superheroes? I'm assuming you do at least like them.
No, I can't speak about that. Sorry.
Moving on. Next question.
No, okay. I guess I started out liking comic books when I was a kid, and there was a period of time where I completely stopped reading comics for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to say I grew out of them, but I think when Frank Miller's Daredevil and Dark Knight came out, I started to get back into comic books, and I followed it for quite a while after that. So I guess it's kind of a reboot, resurgence.
Sure. Yeah, that happens to people.
Relove. I don't know.
Yeah. And what a great place to come back on with Frank Miller's Daredevil, too.
Yeah. Well, I think because at that point I was ready for more adult material.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, everything was like, I mean, we'd go to like the garage sales, and you know, the comic books had like 5 cents on them.
Right.
I mean, that's how old the comic books that I grew up with.
You get them from dime stores and things like that. Yeah, the Walgreens. Did they influence you as an artist as you grew up? Did they make you want to draw?
They did. I think that I grew up on Vancouver Island, which is basically farmland. Okay, so at that time I was A, geek, B, Asian.
Sure.
And this was long before it was fashionable to be a geek.
Either
B,
of those.
Asian.
That's right.
So I think, yes, at that time comic books were kind of a way to escape. And, of course, you know, living on a farm, it was pretty damn boring.
Sure.
So, yeah, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I read comic books a lot back then. I did end up tracing them as a way to start off.
Sure.
And then as I got better at it, I went, oh well, I can draw, and I'm enjoying this. So then I went on to art school, and then on and on and on.
Yeah.
Do they still influence my work? To some extent, but I'm finding that when people do comic books now, they're getting away from drawing from real life or from the world around them. And when you are drawing comic books and learning by looking at somebody else's comic book drawings, the level of your work decreases. So it's almost like getting a Xerox copy of a Xerox copy of a Xerox copy.
Sure.
So most people these days who are drawing comic books are not even looking at real life. They're not drawing from real life. They're drawing
Sure.
from what they've seen drawn by somebody else who may or may not be drawing from real life either.
Right.
So they're making the same mistakes all the way down the line.
Right.
So I try not to be too influenced by it anymore, and I try to widen my scope of there's so many things that can influence the way you draw, and it doesn't have to be visual either. It can be photographs, it can be movies, but it can also be something like studying some other country's culture, or going traveling, or just exposing yourself to the world around you,
Right.
and that has a better effect on your work, because it enriches it rather than you're just drawing from somebody else's
Sure. Right.
experience.
Yeah. Speaking of influences, I want to talk about Battlestar Galactica. If you want to.
What is that?
Yeah, it's this show. It's got these robots
Tell
with the
me more.
things, and you were involved in redesigning a lot of the universe for the miniseries.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to know is a couple things. Did you feel, or did any of the design team feel, you were working with something sacred, clearly. Did you feel that you needed to respect certain aspects of the original production, or were you just ready to wipe the table clean and just go for it?
That was not really our call.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, when I read the script, yes, I went, this is a pretty good script. I mean, I it was a good read, and I went, but it's not Battlestar, at least not the Battlestar Galactica we grew up with, and
Sure.
I was readily aware of that.
Yeah.
And but I don't think that they were interested in continuing the old series.
Okay.
And Sci-Fi at the time, I think they actually came to us and say, we don't want to see anything that looks like the old show.
Right.
In fact, we don't want to see anything that looks like has been seen before.
Right.
And I think part of that comes from, this is my own theory, but I don't know if it's true or not, but it may come from the fact that George Lucas tried to sue Glenn Larson over the original series
Right.
for being too similar.
Right.
So when Sci-Fi got the rights to produce the series, I imagine they were kind of hesitant to do anything that's too closely related to the old show.
Sure.
And just wanted a completely fresh start. So from a legal point of view, it makes sense.
Sure.
From the point of view of the fans, maybe they don't understand that side of the story. I mean, there's probably many reasons why.
Yeah.
Or maybe Ron Moore, maybe he just didn't want to have that legacy attached to...
Well, it's ironic that you mentioned that they tried to push it out, because then as the series went on, they brought By Your Command and some of the old square-headed like Cylons back into it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe at that time they felt like, oh, it's safe, it's referential now.
Probably, yeah.
When you were designing things like the Base Star, Cylon Raiders, and things like that, what did you draw from? Because as I mentioned, the old Cylons look totally different than the new Cylons, where they're, as you mentioned before, things in life that you looked at or other artists' work.
I think my first attempts were, I did try to make it look like the old Cylons.
Okay.
And they just kept getting rejected.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly, not suddenly realized, but then I took a closer look at the script and realized, well, okay, the Cylons are not the same as the old series. They're not lizards or well, they're sort of robots. But
Right.
the reasoning behind it is that they're evolving to become more human. And so I thought, well, okay, then we should probably try to aim for something more organic, more closer to the human anatomy.
Sure.
So that's how, if you look at the design I did, there's certain shapes that it kind of looks like muscle groups and
Yeah.
whatever. I would have liked to have done more of that, but you kind of have to, walk the.
Is there a line where you're limited by where you'll give them a design, they go, we can't afford to put all the little things in there, so can you pull it back or give me something more simple?
We didn't have that problem on Galactica just because there wasn't time to develop the designs to put so much detail in.
You're working fast.
We were working extremely fast.
Yeah.
I mean, there's air dates and whatever.
Right.
And Sci-Fi really didn't have a clear idea of what they wanted.
Okay.
So you can't spend like a week on a drawing and hand it in and go, nope, that's not it.
No, you're right.
No, you have to do a simple drawing. Say, is this even close to what you want?
Right. Yeah.
And eventually we kind of got to the point where somebody sent me a fax, said, I want it to kind of look like this, and I looked at it and went, oh, okay. And, I extrapolated from that.
Sure.
And from that idea, then, I'm sure there were certain points where they went, that's probably not possible. But it was CG, so, I mean, you can kind of fudge things a little bit.
Sure.
I think the only thing that they really wanted in the Silence was to have that impossibly thin waist.
Yeah.
That was their number one order, because with the impossibly thin waist, then you know for a fact it's not a guy in a suit.
Right, sure. There's
Yeah.
nothing in there, yeah. Was Star Wars Droids your first job? It's very early for you.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you have freedom to develop sort of your own things there? Like, was
At
there
that
oversight?
Point, at that point, it was literally my first job in the industry.
Yeah.
So I was working in a department called Layout. So no, I had no creative input whatsoever.
Okay,
on that
sure.
show.
So
Yeah.
this is just layout for animation?
Layout for an animation. It was just essentially breaking down the scene into certain layers and saying, okay, this. We need to break down the scene with 5 characters, 2 characters on one level, 1 character on another level, and maybe a mid-ground background element and a background element.
Sure.
And it's essentially a blueprint for how the scene is going to be animated.
Was this your first CONvergence?
This is my first CONvergence, yes.
Are you enjoying it so far?
And I'm converted, yes.
Yeah, he's already been converted the first day. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for talking with us, and thanks for coming to the show, and I hope you're enjoying yourself.
Yep.
And I hope you come back in future years.
Invite me.
I will do. Thank you. I hope his cough cleared up. I'm sure he's fine now. I just connected with him on Facebook, so somebody is operating his Facebook account if he didn't make it. But I'm sure he's fine. I really liked hearing him talk about growing up on Vancouver Island and having. It seems like travel and experiencing things is important for him. Certainly, it's influenced his art, and he talked about it's boring, so you want to get out there and see things.
Right.
And his advice, he didn't frame it like this, but I think it was couched in there. His advice for aspiring artists: don't just trace Rob Liefeld stuff. If he can't draw feet, you're never going to be able to draw feet.
Right.
Get out there and draw real things. Experience a lot of different artist styles, and don't just if you love comics, great, let that inspire you, but don't be somebody who just traces comics or just goes, I want to do the Jim Lee cross hatching. Let's do this. Let's get that going. Yeah, but he was a nice guy. I was talking to him. We were on this panel, Superheroes, Rated R. And before the panel got rolling, I was talking to him about, I saw some kid with a So Say We All shirt or something like that.
Sure.
And I was like, how's that feel? That's got to be, well, now it's normal, I'm sure, but it had to be kind of weird to see somebody walking around the Cylon Base Star on their shirt or something like that. You're like, you're welcome, kid. Like, what is
I
it like?
designed that.
Yeah. And he said, well, honestly, I wish I had a piece of all those shirts because apparently that wasn't part of the deal. And when he was getting started on it, Sci-Fi hadn't even really thought about the merchandise potential of that.
Sure.
It just didn't, I guess, occur to them, which to me seems like...
You're leaving money on the table.
No kidding. I mean, Sci-Fi's made some bad decisions. Canceling Farscape is one of them. But
yes.
you think that's just bottom line.
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah. So anyway, that's changed now. There's plenty of Battlestar Galactica stuff out there.
Yeah.
And when you see it, give a little thought. Give a little thought
Well,
to
that's
Mr.
it, Mr. Chu.
Yeah. Appreciate what he did for that. Because I think he did great. I mean, when I think about the show, I think about a lot of things, the new show. But those, you think about the Cylons.
Yeah,
and
you do.
You think about the ships and stuff like that. And that's so characteristic of it and so original, even for something that's adapted from something else. Just really neat. So
It is really neat.
great to run into him. It was his first year at the show, and I hope he comes back, and we'd love to talk to him again. Stan Lee didn't invent comic books.
What?
I know, right?
That's crazy.
I don't think is that true? Someone check on that. No, he didn't. Comic books are all over the place. They're all over the world. And we're talking about a French comic book series today on Comic Book Club, Valerian and Laureline.
Yes.
It's created by Pierre Christin, who is the primary writer, if the only writer, really. And the artist is Jean-Claude Mézières.
All right.
That's close enough. And they did this, their Valerian and Laureline, continually until around 2010.
Okay.
So from 1967 to 2010.
That's a long time.
Yes. And their stuff was published primarily through Dargaud, which is a very famous French publishing house. What happens in Valerian and Laureline, the City of Shifting Waters?
Valerian is sent off to investigate.
Who's Valerian? Besides the root that you chew to go to sleep.
He's a space cop.
Yeah, but
basically.
He's a time cop, too.
Yeah.
He's a space and time cop.
Space and time cop.
Right.
He's sent to investigate something that's going on, and Laureline is not invited.
You are not invited.
So right away, we're going off to a good start.
Yeah.
She later shows up, but
Right. But what is he? Okay, I'm going to help you out.
yeah, please
Because that part of your brain is already melted. I can see it coming out of your ear. No, he's tracking Zomboul, who is this crime, like this, sort of like stereotypical crime lord bad guy.
Yes,
who,
that's right.
We don't know because we read this thinking it was the first, but he
Right.
attempted to take over the galaxy in the last volume. And in this volume, he has escaped custody. He's escaped. He was being put on trial, and he got away. He stole a time ship, and he's gone back into the past.
That's right.
Back to 1986.
So they've gone back to the past as well.
Right, to follow him. And 1986, as we all remember, was the year that the polar ice caps melted and flooded everything. Terrible, terrible time that was. And so, Valerian tracks him to New York, which is now a city, a flooded city, like Venice, sort of.
Right.
And there are all kinds of ne'er-do-wells looting it. And civilization is kind of fractured at this point. He meets this crime lord who seems like a kind of nice guy that actually ends up joining them
Right.
on their adventures. And he's got a cadre of scruffy-looking guys who are busy stealing jewels from the Diamond District, or expensive stuff out of penthouses,
Right.
in the Upper West Side, Upper East Side. And so, he has to. The first part, it's the book's 2 volumes. The first volume is Valerian trying to find out what's going on in New York. After that, they are kidnapped by Zomboul's robot army and taken to Yellowstone.
Yep.
This thing is like a travelogue, like America. It's very much about America. It's like, let's set a book in America. New York City. Oh, America.
I know.
Hey, disco. Good. Jellystone Park. Oh, Yellowstone Park. Yellowstone Park. And so they go there as well, and they meet a scientist who looks like Jerry Lewis. He looks like the Nutty Professor. You got that, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's what's going on there. So anyway, and hilarity ensues. What'd you think about this? I mean, you've read old comic books before. This is pretty old. This is the late 1970 or so this came out.
Okay. I don't know. I thought it was okay. I thought that Laureline wasn't in it enough.
If you think about her
Yeah.
as an ancillary character and sort of sidekick to the main hero,
Sure.
a Sancho Panza, if you will,
Sure.
it's fine. If you think about her as a woman character with apparently all the same skills, time cop skills,
Yes.
as Valerian, and just sitting out of the action and going, I wish I could cook something. Bad news.
Yeah.
It's bad news.
I agree. At one point, she gets shrunk
For fun.
for fun,
It's for a goof.
for goof,
Yeah.
for laugh, if you will. But she, like, there's nothing they can do to reverse it. They're like, oh, it'll just wear off over time.
Right.
And so,
And it doesn't, and it's not like, oh, thank God she's small. She can climb through this crack and help us. It's just something that happens.
Yeah.
Kind of like the movie Valerian and City of a Thousand Planets.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a bunch of things that happen.
Exactly.
I didn't mind that, though. I liked
Yeah.
this. If you've read some of the old like hair stuff, or it has that feel. It's very colorful. There are a lot of things that happen just because they thought it was a cool idea. It's not meticulously plotted to all come together like, amazingly. The one thing I did kind of like that is they go back in time, and Valerian isn't too worried. Like, he's not going to wear a T-shirt that says "I'm a time cop from the future," but he's a little concerned about how his actions might affect what's going to happen or what goes on.
Sure.
And they live in the 28th century or whatever.
Something like that.
One of their laws is that, we've got time travel, but you can't travel back to this period from like the late 80s till like the 25th century or something like that. It's forbidden to go back to that zone.
Okay.
We don't get the explicit reasons. Maybe we will in later volumes, but just basically like, you're supposed to fix stuff, but we could really mess something up. Like, this was an important time when the human race got back on its feet, and a lot of the things that became the Galaxity and the Galactic Service, like, came from there. So don't mess with that stuff.
Right.
And he goes back and he finds out that, and we do spoilers all the time in Comic Book Club, that their presence is completely tied to everything that happens later on. Like, they basically, this nutty professor guy has almost invented a time machine, and then Valerian and Laureline, being well-trained time agents, know how a time machine works, so they complete the work, and now they've got a time machine.
Right.
And they use it to defeat Zombul eventually. And then when they get back, they're like, okay, now we got to take this out, take that part out. There you go, there's your time machine. He's like, you guys broke a time machine. You just invented a time machine. It's
They're
like, well, maybe you'll
but
invent it
it's-
someday, but
It's too
you
soon
can't have
for
it.
it
Yeah,
to
it's too soon,
exist.
right? But that time machine eventually becomes like the basis of a lot of the technology that for humanity going forward.
Right.
And we even see after they let was it Sunray is the crime boss guy, and then the nutty professor, I don't remember his name. As soon as Valerian and Laureline leave, they go off to immediately either work on a time machine, or the crime boss guy starts a new crime empire. And they're inspired by these visitors from the future,
Right.
who can't help but have influenced events.
Exactly.
That's what I wanted on my time travel stories. I thought that was neat.
That is neat.
But you didn't like it.
Well, I just felt like some of the parts were, I don't know.
Do tell.
Well, like when Laureline like comes back from being shrunk, like her clothes don't fit because her clothes didn't go back to the right size at the same rate.
Right.
So she has ripped clothes and everything.
But it's not. This is a kid's book in 1969. It's not done
explicit.
exploitatively. No.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, why
still
couldn't they just have?
just kind of bothered
What about
me.
her shoes the wrong size or something?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right. I can see that, I guess.
So, I mean, maybe that's being nitpicky.
What do you think of the art style?
I thought it was okay.
You are down on this,
I'm not
like Janis Joplin.
I'm not loving it so much.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad that we finally disagreed about something. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I want to get my hands on the next one. I'm
Okay.
sure at some point maybe it'll not be good. a lot of things get better the longer they go. So if it's only going to get better from here, I really like that. Like, yeah, it's not meticulously plotted. It's a lot of Valerian bouncing from one situation to the next. But I like the fact that he's... and Dane DeHaan does not capture this really at all in the film, but I like the fact that he's kind of like, in the grand tradition of like these 60s heroes, he's like, yeah, I'll probably be fine. His bosses are like, be careful about this. And he's like, just, don't kill anybody. He kills some people. It's probably going to be fine. And he's just sort of like this have space gun will travel kind of guy. At one point, he's like, I got to build a raft or get out of here because he's in the flooded city. And he goes to the boardroom. And I guess the boardroom has inflatable chairs.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So he uses one as a raft. But the inflatable... they think that inflatable furniture was going to be the wave of the future in 1986?
I don't know.
No, it's just going to be in dorm rooms. He basically uses like a dorm room chair to escape from these guys, which I thought was kind of funny. So that, that really appealed to me. I liked that the stakes were low. And I liked the combination. You see this a lot in French comics of the stylized characters, but a very realistic world. So there's this sketched out, drafted, great sort of view of like a ruined Manhattan, and then the kind of cartoony guy running through it with like cartoon hobos shooting at him with machine guns.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's my jam. I'll take that.
Okay.
Yeah. Not convinced.
I'm not convinced.
All right. Well, there you go. Not a lot of black people. The one black person,
No.
Fairly represented. The axe that I grind,
Yeah.
or the flambears. I'm trying to think of like a French axe, where French people don't seem to know that black people are regular people and aren't exciting caricatures. And this guy he's a crime boss. I think he wears a fez at one point, but otherwise he's just like
He's just a crime
he's
boss.
just a guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of cool. And I like the fact that he had this whole thing going, and he's got all these guys running out and stealing stuff, but he sort of levels with Valerian. There was a lot of the bad guy gets the good guy and then just talks to him. There's none of that, I have a gun in my room, I'll go get it. Bam, he's dead. It's just the whole like monologuing type thing.
Right.
You should join me, that sort of thing. We're not so different, you and I.
Right.
And the crime boss is basically like, I got these guys. I know this stuff isn't worth anything. What are we going to do with rubies on the high sea? Nothing. So I've just got these guys working for me so I can get this boat going, and then we're going to sail out of here and sail somewhere better. And then when that all falls apart, he doesn't bemoan the death of his criminal empire. He's like, all right, what are you guys doing? Are we going to Yellowstone? All right, let's see what's out there. That's fun.
Yeah.
But then, of course, when he gets a chance, when they go to Brasilia or whatever later on, he's like, okay, now I'm back. All right, it's crime time. Let's crime it up.
Right.
It was neat. I disagree. We didn't talk about this in the last show, but the movie is essentially based almost entirely on the 6th volume, which is called The Ambassador of the Shadows.
Okay.
And in that book, it's different than the film, but there is a converter, a little animal called a converter that makes copies of things that it eats.
Okay.
And these aliens who have lost their planet like kidnap an ambassador by putting everybody in cocoons. And they go to this place where Valerian has to go track him down and then finds out the truth about stuff. And so that's almost... And it takes place on this space station called Point Central, which is a city of 1,000 planets. It's a giant space station where there's a different sort of area where humans live, Martians live, or whatever, so on and so forth.
So there are a lot of similarities.
In that volume.
Yeah.
Should this have been the Valerian film? Or could this be a future Valerian film? Imagine a world where there will be future Valerian films.
Oh, boy. This could be a future Valerian film. Sure, why not?
All right, you're in. So, ultimately, would you recommend this?
I would not recommend this simply because I didn't really enjoy it that much.
Fair enough.
So.
You're wrong.
That's fine.
But it's fair enough.
I'm okay being wrong.
I would absolutely recommend this. It's great. I doubt somebody watched Valerian, the movie, probably because they liked it, then went, or maybe if they were like, what crap did this come from? But they found the comic books and probably enjoyed them. And I would say the same thing. If you liked the parts that you liked from Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets, let that take you to the comics. You're going to get that stuff out of the comics. I think it's there. I think you'd really like it.
Okay.
We disagree.
Yes, we do.
It is a banner day. We have disagreed about something. Let's talk about what we could possibly disagree about in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, we are reading something. So we've been doing this thing where our choices, our selections kind of mirror what's going on in the world of nerdy entertainment. And in 2 weeks or so, the Defenders show will be out. That's the new Netflix show featuring the heroes of the 4 Netflix Marvel series. And so I thought we would do that thing. We would read what inspired that, essentially.
Okay.
I'll warn you, though, that it is very different than what is going to be on the TV show.
How so?
Well, we're going to read the actual Marvel Knights comic. This is Marvel Knights, the main title when Marvel Knights became a brand of sorts. And so we'll be reading that. And it features some of the street heroes, Daredevil, I think maybe Luke Cage is in there, but also has Black Widow, Punisher, I think like Mobius or like Blade might be in there too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be different than what you know.
All right.
So we're reading the original Marvel Knights title from the year 2000, issues 1 through 5, next time on Comic Book Club. Okay, we got one more interview from our time at CONvergence this year. We talked to author Patrick Tomlinson, Patrick S. Tomlinson, who's an author, comedian, and a political blogger as well. His books are The Ark, Triton's Forge, and he's got a new book that's coming out, any day now. So this is your commercial for the book. Thanks, Patrick. Go check out Children of the Divide. It's part of the Children of the Dead Earth series, and here's our interview. Have you ever? I know you do comedy. Have you ever done comedy here?
Yeah. In fact, last year I was at the Joke Joint at the same time that this was going on, and I hosted a weekend there. It was
nice.
A lot of fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you said you've been coming here. This is your 6th year you've been here.
Yep.
You've been to a lot of cons, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. 6 to 10 a year, depending.
Do you go to WizCon?
I was at WizCon this year. I didn't do any paneling,
Okay.
but I was just there to see friends. Had some dinner.
That's got to be nice sometimes to not have to work, just to be able to enjoy
and
the con.
WizCon's an easy one for me because I live in Milwaukee. It's a it's a 70-minute drive for me. So.
Sure. I want to talk about your fiction. I want to talk about your comedy. But first, I want to talk about your political punditry, if that's the right word.
Sure, yeah.
You have a political Twitter game that is fire, and I want to know how you got into that.
I got mad.
Okay.
I got furious as to what I was learning about my country because there was a lot of truths that I had taken for granted over my 37-year life here. Mm-hmm. Things I'd been taught about what America means.
You just assume that that's the way it goes,
and it was supposed to be the way it is.
Yeah.
And I assumed other things like xenophobia, nationalism, and fascism were dying ideologies. These were things that I just knew.
Yeah.
And hey. I still believe they are dying, but they're doing so very loudly.
Yeah.
And now it's time to put them to bed for good.
You think that's what it is? I mean, I had a theory myself even before November, that maybe this is just the last gasps of evil as we are moving to something new. But boy, it's a loud gasp.
It's pretty loud. I don't think that those tribalistic human impulses will ever go away. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's built into our DNA at some level. But
sure.
The reality is, this was the last time, demographically, without huge amounts of voter suppression and rescinding of voting rights, which they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But this is the last time that these kinds of people were going to have any chance in any national election. Mm-hmm. At this level, when you're just straight voting and you aren't able to gerrymander like you can in the House, and you don't have the built-in advantages of small states in the Senate. The American population and the population of the rest of the world is simply becoming too diverse. Yeah. It's not that white people are dying off. That's not what's happening. But we are not the monopolar, all-powerful people anymore.
Yeah, that's the misconception. I know you got doxxed recently.
Yeah,
It was
it was
fairly
fun.
recently.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
It was a good time. Yeah.
So, I mean, if that's all you get and nobody says thank you, I did want to say thank you. Because as a navel-gazing liberal, after November, I had a lot of thinking and soul-searching to do. And I didn't know I was going to find consolation and hope in the arms of conservative. So, thanks a lot for that.
No, thank
How'd
you.
you get involved with thehill.com?
A tweet.
Just you read the tweets?
Yeah, I had put out a tweet almost exactly a year ago now, and it was in reference to yet another unarmed black man being killed by the police without any real consequence for it. And I had tweeted out because what I had heard over and over again is like, just do what they tell you and you won't get hurt.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we tell hostages, not free citizens interacting with the police.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I tweeted that out, and it got shared a few thousand times. And an editor for The Hill approached me through my email, found me on my email, found my blog, read a few of my other pieces, and was like, "Would you like to write for us?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'd like to write for you."
Yeah.
And that's led to other opportunities. I was in the New York Times recently. So
The theme of the con is space opera this year. Your books take place in space.
They do.
Would you consider them space opera?
The first one is the series is called The Children of the Dead Earth, and the first book is called The Ark. It's a murder mystery set on a 10-mile long generation ship.
Cool.
So it is very much in space, but as far as being a space opera in the way that we usually define the term of large scale,
Right.
Intergalactic empires fighting one another.
Right, sure.
It's not. It's actually a very, in some ways, it's a very small scale story because there's 50,000 people. That's all that's left. Earth is dead. I mean, dead,
Yeah.
like rogue black hole dead.
Okay.
And that's all that's left. And they're all on this ship, and they're waiting to get to the planet they've been shooting for 200 years. They're just about a month away, and somebody gets shoved out an airlock. So it's kind of the ultimate locked room murder mystery, really.
Sure. Kind of noirish in that way.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was,
okay.
that's how it was written.
Where did the seeds of that come from?
Honestly, I was watching a show on Discovery about one of those kind of like how we would approach this sort of shows
If Earth
if
died?
we did this,
Yeah.
how would we go about building a generation ship? And that got me thinking because I've always been kind of a techie, and I like thinking through, and I've been a model builder for 20, 25 years,
Sure.
and so I'm like, hey, what would that actually look like? And after a couple of days, I had this setting. And I started wondering, well, what kind of stories would happen inside this, and and then I became less interested in the hardware because I had that mostly figured out. Then I became more interested in what does a society look like
Yeah, right.
that has to live within these constraints, and what does that do, and who comes out of the other end of that?
Sure. Do you watch The Expanse at all?
Oh, I love it, absolutely love it.
Yeah, because it reminds me sort of like the sort of Miller subplot is
Sure. Yeah.
wearing the hat. I mean, it's a little on the nose, but it's still cool.
Very much so.
Let's talk about your comedy. How long have you been doing comedy?
Just celebrated 5 years last month.
All right.
Yeah.
Was it a decision where you just said, I think I could be good at this, I want to do it, or I just really enjoy it? Like, what got you started in it?
I was getting blasted drunk watching the Brewers at a bar downtown Milwaukee.
So far, I like this story.
And I really had to pee, and the bathroom was in the basement. And as I was walking past, some guys were setting up a stage and putting a list out, and I was like, "What are you guys doing?" Like, well, we're doing open mic comedy. I'm like, sign me up. They're like, have you ever done comedy before? I'm like, no. And it's like, do you have a set prepared? No. Are you drunk?
Boy.
Yes. Okay, what's your name, son? And that's literally how I got started doing comedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any dates you want to talk about here that we can help you promote?
Not coming up just now, mostly because it's really heavy con season for me right now, and and a lot of places kind of take a month or so in the middle of summer off because everybody's outside doing other things.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll really get back into the comedy in the fall. But you can follow along on my website, www.patrickstomlinson.com.
Okay.
There's a section for my comedy there, and when I have dates, I put them up there so people can know.
Have you ever been to or done the Acme here in town?
I really want to.
Yeah, it's a great club.
I want to get up there and do their open mic. But I pretty much have to have that overlap with some other reason to be here because it's a 6.5-hour drive otherwise.
Right, jumping on the bike.
yeah,
right.
So I'd like to get up there and do that. I've hosted and featured at a number of clubs throughout the Midwest, and I'm hoping to get in touch with the people at Acme and maybe get up there for a MC weekend or something. Yeah.
What's your material like?
It's all over the place.
Okay.
Like it's for a long time, I was doing the usual thing of talking about myself and clever wordplay. I've become more political in my comedy over the last year for obvious reasons, because there's just overlapping with everything else that I do.
Yeah, right.
And frankly, there's nothing else to me right now seems serious enough to laugh about.
It's hard to talk about airline food when the world's ending. Yeah,
it's
right.
It's like, what's with hospital pudding? I can't. Oh, they cut it out of the budget after they repealed the Affordable Care Act. Anyway, so I can't.
Right.
The comedy to me, like looking back at the people that I always really loved as growing up, like George Carlin and some of these other formative guys for me. They were using comedy and using laughter to talk about serious things, like really heavy things, and things that we would otherwise try to avoid talking about. So what's the most important thing happening in our country right now? Well, we've been taken over by a fascist traitor, and we really need to do something about that. And if I can get that conversation going with laughs, fine.
How's the crowd take it?
It depends.
Yeah.
There are some crowds are sometimes depending on the city, sometimes even just depending on what hour the show's on.
Yeah.
The older folks tend to turn out for the early show because they have to get to bed.
Yeah.
They're maybe a little less supportive of some of it.
Sure.
And then they get called out badly for all the young people in the crowd, and that's always fun for me. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, just this whole area, Minnesota, Wisconsin, kind of Chicago, Illinois. It's northern, but it's sort of liberal at the same time.
It's like everywhere else, though. You get into any of the major metropolitan areas, and it's damn liberal.
Have you seen any of David Cross's specials on Netflix?
Yes.
He took that one tour around all over the place.
Yep.
Kind of did the same act and then just got different responses. I
Big
thought that
time,
was
yeah.
really brave
Oh,
of
yeah.
him. Tell us about your new book as we head to the end here.
Well, my new book is called Children of the Divide. It's the third in the arc, or in the Children of the Dead Earth series. It's coming out August 1st, and whereas the previous books, the arc was really like I said, a murder mystery, set with a sci-fi background.
Yeah.
Trident's Forge is the second book in the trilogy, and it is more of a first contact action-adventure, taming the wild frontier sort of book.
Okay.
But now, with Children of the Divide, we jump forward again 15 more years, and now we're trying to tackle new problems of urbanization, colonialism, gentrification, the ghettos, how to police diverse populations, and there's a lot of things crop up compared to the last book, and so this one's a lot more social commentary, a lot more political.
Sounds complicated.
It is. It ends up getting very complicated, and there's no good answers to any of it.
No.
Because a lot of the problems, like in the way the book was laid out, a lot of the problems that crop up are nobody's fault, and there's no good solution to them. Because there's limited resources, there's limited time, there's conflicting needs, and everyone on each side is really just doing the best they can, but there's still friction, and there's still resentment and anger underneath all that.
Yeah.
So
civics.
Yeah,
the
civics,
worst.
The worst.
Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Stealthy Geek.
Okay.
You can find me on Facebook. I have both a personal page under Patrick Tomlinson and then also an author page, which gets updated far less frequently.
Sure.
And then there's also my website, www.patrickstomlinson.com.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
I don't think he was overselling, and I don't think you can oversell his book, at least his first one. I've read his first book, and it is really great. I mean, I've always loved generation ship books.
Right.
And I've loved like noir and detective fiction as well. So you take that murder mystery, you set it on a generation ship, boom. There you go.
Yeah.
You could set it anywhere, but why not set it somewhere like that? It's very, very interesting. It's very cool and imaginative. And I like how he takes that world and just, let's do another one. Somebody else falls out of an airlock.
Right.
No, he's, now advancing the story and the timeline, and we get to see what else happens to these people or this group that we're following. I thought that was really neat.
I think it's great that he gets so involved with government and...
He's not running for anything.
No.
Should he run for something?
He totally could.
How do you even start? Yeah, well, first of all, you get a TV show. First of all, you get a bunch of money from your dad. then you run a couple companies into the ground.
Sure.
No. Do you start like... I have a couple friends that are kind of in politics. Like I have a friend who's like on the park board, and I think he's got his eye on like city council.
Okay.
And he's probably my age or a little younger. So is that how you do it? You just kind of start...
I think so.
You build something and just kind of go from there?
Yeah.
You could be a community organizer and then be president.
There you go.
So
You never know.
Hot takes. All hot takes. No, I do as well. And I like the fact that if politics somehow did... If robots just fed us or something and civics didn't exist... I think he would find something else to get upset about. I mean, he seems like the kind of person who is very passionate about stuff.
Yes.
And he's also the perfect... Because I care about this stuff too, but I can't do what he does. Deal with death threats all day on Twitter.
No.
And it's food for him in a way that would never be for me, but that fuels him, that sends his ship to the stars. And he's trying to prevent us living on a dead Earth, so we appreciate him for that.
Yes, we do.
Go check out his books for sure. Also, you can find him at patrickstomlinson.com, where you can find out about his comedy and his writing and his political stuff. It's all there. And he's been there a million times, so I hope that we get to see him again and find out how things are going.
Yeah.
On his bike.
Yes, his bike.
That's a long
It's a
long
long
way.
bike.
I mean, there are
Bike
longer
ride.
journeys, when you saddle up with Dennis Hopper or something like that. But
Yeah.
still, that's not a short way.
It's not a short skip and a hop.
I know. Is it safe? Can you have like a podcast or like some tunes running?
Maybe like
Is that
you
safe?
could have it like in the helmet or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
playing.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like I would... The first 45 minutes, Born to be Wild, would just be playing on a loop in my head. But then the rest of the 6-hour journey, the next 5.5 hours, I'd just be like, God, I'm bored. I've seen a license plate from every state, and I've counted all the blue-footed boobies I can see, and
There's
it's
more
nothing.
bug splat on my visor than I
Yeah,
can handle.
I've wiped my thing off 3 times. Maybe that's where he works on like his books and stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Or like his comedy. You have a whole routine. You pick a venue, you drive there, and depending on how long it takes you to get there, you got a whole routine by the time you get there. And it's not funny at all because you've just been like an ingrown nail, just working yourself into your own psyche. You ever do that? Like work on like a project, like your technical writing, for instance. And you haven't
Sure.
showed it to anybody, and you're like, "This is great," and then you just show it to somebody, and cut to the other side, other camera. It's just scrawling. There's like a stick figure and like, yeah, that looks great. That's great. And that's it. That's enough. We atomic
lot.
blonded it, and we traveled through space and time with Jerry Lewis. We talked to some fabulous guests from CONvergence, so I think we have nailed it for this time. I want to remind you that next week, of course, we're going back to Craft to Services, our quote-unquote bad movie segment, and we've got a special one for this time. First time in a while that we haven't been tied to any other particular releases. We got to choose one that was just basically, what the hell?
That's right.
And we picked Beastmaster.
Because it's awesome.
What the hell? No, it is awesome, and we'll talk about how awesome it is. It's 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. So comfortably, I think, fits within our criteria for a bad film, but a film that people remember.
Yep.
And people are still talking about, and we'll talk about it as well. If you want to talk with us about movies or all kinds of stuff, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. You can also find us on iTunes. If you search for Just Enough Trope, you can find the show page. And if you go there, please subscribe to the show. It's the best way to get the show. It comes to you immediately as soon as it's ready, which is fantastic. And also, while you're there, leave us a review if you don't mind. We like to hear from the fans. We like to hear how you think we're doing, and give us a rating at the very least. We're talking bargain basement here. If you give us a rating, preferably a high one, iTunes knows we're doing a good job. That way we move up in the ranks, and we get to bring more things to people like you and other listeners as well. Everybody gets exactly what they want.
That's right.
So give us 5 steampunk Cruella de Vils. Can you imagine? Isn't like Kingdom Hearts or maybe Disney Infinity basically their multiverse?
basically.
So that's why Luke Skywalker can hang out with Mickey Mouse or whatever. That's their
right.
So yeah. So what if you went to like 5 different realities and got a different Cruella de Vil for each one?
Oh, I like that idea.
So you've got steampunk Cruella de Vil. You've got Cruellem de Vil, the gender swapped version. So it's a guy, and he wants a nice like waistcoat made of Dalmatian puppies or something like that. You've got Super de Vil. It's Cruella de Vil with superpowers.
Okay.
And she has
That's
killed
terrifying.
all dogs in her universe, and she now wants to reach out and take dogs of spotted varieties from other universes.
Oh my gosh.
And they all team up to go against a guy that writes jingles. We're gonna need somebody on the other side of this thing here to stand up against them. So instead, until we work that out, give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. One more reminder that we are talking about Beastmaster again on the next show. So if you want to watch that and it's available, you can find it. It's out there. Go check that out. We're gonna have a lot of fun talking about that. Whew, finally, we can turn the air conditioner back on. Sad the show's over. Glad that we won't die of heat stroke. So signing off for now. I'm your host, Caliban.
I'm your co-host, Mikan Hana.
Keep the geek fires burning.